Right, for more on that testimony of André Ruyter in the committee there, Scopa Public Accounts, Watchdog Scopa. We speak now to the former chairperson of that committee, Themba Godi, who joins us now on the line. It's a good evening to you, Mr. Godi, and thank you very much for your time. It could be, from where we are sitting, that Scopa could have been inadequately prepared for an André Ruyter who was not going to really be forthcoming with information, and therefore they didn't have quite the know-how and the resources to be able to pull that information out of him. Or it could be that they didn't expect that André Ruyter, seeing that he had done this public interview, would be so scant on the details. Or somebody could say, well, André Ruyter, I beg your pardon, was well within his right to play it safe to protect himself.
Yeah, it could be a combination of, of the above. But I would imagine most likely the fact that when he was leaving Eskom, he made quite a number of allegations. He was quite extravagant with his language, with his allegations. And so the expectation was, well, when he came before Parliament, he would actually use that platform to elaborate even more, only to find that actually the opposite was the case. The committee having been blindsided by the way it turned out. So in that situation, then there was nothing that they could do, and thus the man was evasive. I was asking myself, but so why is this guy here? What is he doing if he's not going to say anything that will throw light into the challenges faced by an institution so critical and central to our well-being as a country, as Eskom?
So André Ruyter says it's not in the interest of this oversight committee, it's not in the interest of other investigation processes I'm engaged with to disclose this today. And besides, I don't think it's a critical element to what we are investigating here. So let's move on. If Scopa doesn't want to move on and they actually want to sit on this a little bit more, what options do they have?
Oh, I almost banged the table when he said that. Because I said, my God, the arrogance. Back then, anyway, he would have known. If he didn't, he would have told him that in that meeting there was one elephant, and that elephant was Scopa. It was quite arrogant of him to seek to tell the committee what is good for it and what is not. And I think that, for me, summarized his entire attitude. He knows, he will decide, and that's exactly what he did. And that entire exercise, in a way, not only showed his arrogance and his playing around, but it also said, maybe for Parliament, when you have such high-profile cases and instances, is it not best to subpoena people? Because once they are subpoenaed, then they are forced to answer. But when they are nicely invited, then they can nicely refuse to answer your questions. And so what becomes the value of the exercise? I don't like the Americans, but anybody who appears before any committee of Parliament in America, you are subpoenaed and you take an oath. So you are therefore forced to answer all the questions put before you. But in this particular case, I think he took advantage of the fact that he was not subpoenaed, so he could decide what to answer and what not to answer, which then does not assist the public to understand and appreciate what exactly were the challenges that he encountered at Eskom, and what is it that Praveen and others were defending in this gentleman for the last 3 years, and what technical qualities did this man possess to be given a responsibility to run Eskom for as long as he did?
Does this then maybe also give Minister Pravin Gordhan a way out? Because he didn't answer, he didn't give the names. Mr. Pravin Gordhan can also come and say, well, it was just hearsay. It was just information that he was telling me, and there was really nothing concrete from what he said to me.
No, a name is a name. If the name was Thabo, it doesn't matter whether it was hearsay or not. The question is, who is this person that he told you about? If it's a hearsay, it's not you, it's him. But obviously, Pravin Gordhan, if he's also nicely asked to appear before Scopa, then he can easily sidestep that question and not say it. And the country will remain in the dark in understanding what it is that exactly happened. Because, I mean, we were told Eskom was destroyed by affirmative action, and so we're bringing people who have skills and capabilities, and they're going to root out all this corruption. And you know, having gone through the Zondo commission process, you would expect that it had set the benchmark for exposing the corrupt and hanging them to dry, getting them arrested and sent to court. And yet here we are. We want to whisper in the dark about people who are actually endangering. There were serious question marks around the credibility of André Ruyter about the authenticity. I mean, every time people criticized Pravin, you would say this is a fight back from the corrupt. We're not going to step back on fighting corruption. We're going to do it. I thought they would actually seek protection from the public by naming people and knowing that the public, knowing who it is, it actually weakens the corrupt. But to try and still keep them secret, it actually emboldens them rather than solving the problem for us. And I think towards the end as we enter the end of the term for the current administration, I don't think, Thabo, there is much that you can say has been done that separates it from the previous one in terms of governance, in terms of accountability, in terms of transparency, from the bank statements to Pala to Eskom to this and that. The more things change, it appears, the more they stay the same. It definitely does put a spanner in the works, because if the Ruyter is relying on that was private entities to investigate Eskom, and it's just that, then it becomes very, very problematic. You see now we are sitting with a problem where Eskom is asking for an exemption not to report irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure in their financial reports. And if you look at what is the reason behind that, it is because Eskom does not have sufficient internal capacity to record and count and say we have 20 irregular expenditures, or we have 50, or we have 70. Even when they have reports from internal audit or from forensic investigations. And you would imagine that in the 3 years that has been there, first thing to do for anybody, strengthen internal controls so that you can be able to tell and say what is it that is happening in this organization. And 3 years, the Ruyter is gone. Eskom does not have the capacity to count and say these are the problems that we're having. So, and now we're sitting here who are engaged as a country on the basis of a dossier done by some former apartheid spy who has a checkered, background and history. And you ask yourself, but why did André go for such characters? And then you listen to his criticism of the ruling party, as in the letter by President Bek. You see a right-winger who looks at the current dispensation from a very, very negative, perspective. And you ask yourself, but what then did President Ramaphosa, Pravin Gordhan, Tito Mboweni, Professor Mahoba, what did they see in this guy that they felt there's a commonality of values that they shared with him?
Themba Godi, outlined there, letting us down, but I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. Let's leave it there for now. That is the former Scopa chair there, Themba Godi, reflecting on the work of that committee earlier today as André Ruyter was giving testimony.